Hi everyone, my name is Ram, and my presentation today is about an extraordinary comic book character that I created named Priya. She's the first Indian rape survivor who is a superhero. And she has become a new face to fight gender-based violence in India and around the world. For me, it all started in December 2012. As many of you will remember, there was this horrible gang rape that happened on a bus in Delhi. Well, I was in Delhi at that time and was involved in the protests that were occurring. And like many Indians, I was horrified by what had happened on the bus and also angered at the government for their indifference. At one of the rallies, I spoke to a Delhi police officer and asked him what he thought about what happened on the bus, and in particular to her. And he said something which surprised me and really started me on this journey. He said, "No good girl walks home alone at night. No good girl walks home alone at night." And I knew then that the problem of gender violence in India and around the world was not a legal problem, but a cultural problem. So I began traveling around India speaking with NGOs, poets, philosophers, people working in gender violence issues, and eventually rape survivors. And again, they all kept telling me that they were not having legal problems getting justice. Rather, their friends, their family, the community, and even the cops were discouraging them from pursuing justice. The shame was put on them. I interviewed several gang rape survivors who made the framework of the character of Priya. And one of them told me that when she was being raped by a group of men, they actually videographed the rape on their cell phones and threatened her that if she ever went to the police or told her family, they would release the video online. So that night, she went home, took a shower, burned her clothes, never told everyone, never got medical help, and lived with the trauma for several weeks. And it was only when that same group of men raped another woman in a neighboring village that she decided to pursue justice. It was a very long ordeal, over 3 years, and throughout that time, her family was ostracized, thrown out of the community. She was always under the constant threat of death, and her father committed suicide from the shame. She eventually did get justice, and those men were put into jail. When I interviewed her 3 years after the rape, she was being guarded by a police officer with a semi-automatic machine gun. Her life, even then, was always under the constant threat of death. Now, just imagine spending the rest of your life knowing that this is what you have to face up to. This is what justice equals. Well, there is no incentive to pursue justice, knowing this. What this does is it creates a vicious circle in which certain men feel empowered to commit more rape because they know they can get away with it. At the same time, I started reading up on Hindu mythology and the remarkable tales that exist there. And I noticed a common motif that kept reoccurring. A villager would call upon the gods when there was a dire situation. And I thought, what's more dire than the problem of gender violence in India? So I started conceiving of a story in which a gang rape survivor calls upon the goddess Parvati when she has no one else to turn to. And the goddess and goddess Parvati and all the Hindu gods get involved, but it's really up to her to motivate and challenge her community and society. And that became the origins of Priya Shakti, the comic book. Now, I won't go into the whole story of the comic book, which you can actually download it for free on our website and read it for yourself. But I'm going to really focus on the very end of the comic book. At the very end, Priya is thrown out of her community and is living in the jungle and is being stalked by a tiger. The tiger, of course, represents fear. The goddess Parvati comes down, tells Priya she needs to look the tiger in the eye and turn fear into power, or Shakti. So Priya climbs down the tree, looks the tiger in the eye, and says a very powerful mantra: "Speak without shame and stand with me and bring about the change you want to see." Can I have everyone in the audience say the mantra with me, if you don't mind? Speak without shame and stand with me and bring about the change you want to see. And with that, the tiger becomes her friend, and she rides the tiger back into the town that threw her out. And at first, everyone is scared. They're running away. They've never seen a woman on a tiger coming into town before. And she speaks this mantra to them, and soon they start following her and become memorized. And they go from village to village speaking this powerful mantra, and begins a movement to fight gender-based violence and to attack at those patriarchal views which are at the core of this problem. Now, we released this comic book just only 6 months ago, December 2014, at the Mumbai Comic Con, and immediately it went super viral, with over 500,000 downloads of the comic book worldwide, half of them just in India, and over 400 news stories all over the world. More importantly, it changed the level of debate in India from focusing on punishing perpetrators to focusing on how society should treat rape survivors. Now, I'm going to briefly talk about the goddess Parvati, who is such an important character in this comic book and also in Indian mythology. Often she's compared in relationship to her husband, Shiva, who is the god of destruction. And Shiva has a tendency to live up in his mountain cave, isolated from the concerns of the world and also people. He's reflecting on universe and big ideas, and is not really concerned about human problems. The goddess Parvati is there to compel and to open Shiva's eyes and to make him empathetic to the problems of humanity. She does that in Hindu mythology and also in the comic book. And she also motivates Priya to be the guiding light, the person who will motivate and challenge people. One of the really cool things we've been doing with this comic book is we've been bringing the artwork onto the streets in murals in Mumbai and Delhi. And everyone knows this image, this image of a woman on a tiger. It's actually an image that we reimagined of the goddess Durga, who is the ultimate goddess of feminine power, sitting on a tiger. But rather than putting a goddess on a tiger, we put a rape survivor on the tiger. And whenever we paint a mural or create it, the whole community gathers around it, and they start trying to figure out what does this mean. They know it could be goddess Durga or not, but they realize that it's really about an empowered woman, and they always tell us that. Our next step of this project is to release the comic book in Hindi to schools in India. This is where we are in the next stage. Because we know this comic book really resonates with our core audience, which are preteens, 8 to 14-year-olds. And in India and all over the world, they're at a critical age in which they're starting to understand gender identity, gender roles, sexuality, and this comic book can be a very powerful tool to talk about gender violence. Recently, UN Women, the United Nations, recognized the comic book and Priya as a gender equality champion, the first comic book character to be recognized as that. Now, what are we trying to do with this comic book? We're trying to say that change is possible. Now, you have to remember back in December 2012, there were millions and millions of people in India out on the street fighting for gender equality, fighting against gender violence. They are the millions of Priyas that were out there. So, in your little goodie bags, there's a little cutout of I Stand with Priya. So please, take a photo of it, share it with your friends, take a selfie, share it, put it on social media, and tell everyone in the world that you stand with Priya. Priya also means love. So in a sense, you're standing up with love. Thank you very much.